As a producer working in public media, my favorite thing about my job is that I get to hear people's stories. To me, stories are the best way to learn, and the Vietnam War is something I've always wanted to learn about, because all I did know was that it had been a really divisive time in our history, and I wanted to understand why. Since Bellefonte has been home to me for the past few years, I figure the Veterans Day celebration here is a good place to start.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm humbled and I'm inspired by having this opportunity to come before you today, because I know that my commitment, my experience in Vietnam pales in comparison to what a lot of you went through. God bless America.
I've noticed that even now when I ask people about it, they tense up and close off. Hasn't enough time passed that we can have conversations about what happened during Vietnam? Because if we can't talk about it, how do we heal from it? And if now is not a time to heal, then when will that time come?
Hello.
Hi Lou, it's Lindsay from WPSU.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
Real good.
To get a better understanding about what happened during Vietnam, I started talking to Pennsylvania veterans and people who went to Penn State during the war.
All you're going to hear and see on TV and movies is stuff about soldiers, killing and dying and all that stuff, and I've got a whole different outlook because of what my job was.
I sincerely believe that the best way to be pro-America at the time and to support our country at the time was to resist that war.
The way the American fight is effective, but you have to be rich because you have to bomb the hell out of the area before you move in. So it's much safer, and we cannot fight that way, especially after 1973 when the American soldiers withdraw.
Some of the people I talked to were eager and proud to serve their country, but others told me it was the same sense of patriotism that led them to oppose the war. How could both be true? I knew phone calls wouldn't be enough for me to answer these questions, so I set out to continue these conversations in person.
This magazine right here, you can pick that up. It's got one bullet in it. It's an AK-47 magazine there was a whole pile of weapons, and I looked around and the jungle fatigues have this great big pocket on this leg. I just slid it in my pocket and
Kept
walked away. The top shelf is actually my Uncle Ben. He was in the Army Air Corps. Yeah, every little thing in here has got something.
The meaning.
Yeah, it's got something in it. All kinds of crazy stuff. Just kind of a collector, but kind of a historian in a way, I guess.
What was the attitude about service in your community or in your family?
Oh, very patriotic. Everybody had uncles, fathers, everybody had relatives that had been in World War II and Korea. So where I lived, I mean, it was just you went in the military because that's what everybody did in your family, and that's, tradition. You had to.
I remember thinking, I'm going to go be a medevac chopper pilot. I want to get into the Army, and I kind of wanted to see what I was made out of.
I wanted to understand how the country went from the patriotism and unity of World War II to the anger and division of Vietnam, and why some people felt so strongly against the war that they would risk jail time or exile to avoid serving.
America to me was the highly moral, the land of opportunity, and the Vietnam War just seemed like an unjust war, something that our country should not be doing. So it was out of a a sense of moral outrage that I got into the anti-war movement.
This is where we draw the line.
I was prepared at the time to go to Canada. I was so dead set against the war in Vietnam that I was going to go to Canada. And I was really worried because I had a very conservative father. I didn't want to abandon my family. I didn't want to go to Canada, but I did not want to go fight in a war that I didn't believe in.